All right, so this is our last video on the problem of trust. Um, and what we're about to go through is not a fun topic, but it's a large topic. There are over 4 billion people in the world that are negatively impacted by the problem of trust. And we'll start with the non-banked. And the more I learn on this, the more shocked I got. So of all the adults on Earth, about 25% of them are non-banked. And the reason for this is really just a combination of these three items here. I mean, it's just extreme poverty, and centralized banking. It also has know your customer laws, or it needs to know your customers, called KYC. So you have to provide identity, and identification forms don't really exist at these levels of impoverishment. And from those individuals' point of view, or in those societies, there's essentially no money system. There's no foundation for cooperation and exchange. They have really no infrastructure to start developing their civilization. And it's more than that. It also affects all of us. So when it comes to uh, human advancement, we have a significant amount of our human horsepower basically not contributing to our growth and productivity, to our advancement. And then there's also inequality. Remember from a couple of videos ago, this yellow line here is the growth and productivity. And if you can remember, with inflation, the M2 money supply would be something along this rate right here. However, the wages paid to the low skilled labor workforce, the wages have been at this level, so essentially declining. And here's another way to look at it. Um, so the value of wages falling in the last 50 years. So where does all this extra money goes? Well, it goes towards, it contributes to inequality. So the extra wealth goes to a very small percent of the population that essentially is financially literate and knows how to protect against inflation and benefit from it. To the top 1% here of household incomes. This is what it's been rising as. So inequality is inflation causes extreme inequality, and the financially literate, know how to protect against inflation. If you take your money and buy hard assets, real estate, gold, stocks, stuff of that sort, these assets, over time, as the price of money increases, their supply increases. Hard assets will generally keep the same price as inflation, and they are a protection against inflation. And in addition, it also has to do with the skills you have, or any specialized skills. So if you have a skill that's easy to get, if the demand goes up for that skill, well, it's just easy to produce more of it. So it's just easy to produce more of that skill. So you're not going to be able to benefit. In fact, the value of that skill will go down. But the reverse is true. If you have a hard to get skill, that skill is in high demand. So for like heart surgeons, if the demand for that skill goes up, there's no way to, or no easy way to quickly increase the supply of heart surgeons. Rather, the value of that skill is going to go up. So that lets you keep pace with inflation. And these are some back of the napkin numbers. I looked around online. I found this poll. It is good enough to make the point that we need to get across here, which is there's a lot of people in America, a lot of American adults that do not know how to protect against inflation, and very likely are not aware of the impacts that it's having on a day-to-day basis. And again, very loose extrapolation across the planet, but good enough to make this point. If you apply this idea worldwide, there's a significant number of people. These are individuals who do use banks, who are continually losing their wealth to inflation. And it's not just the lost wages, although that's happening too. There are second and third order impacts. Uh, so your reduction in wages, you can see over time, over the last 50 years, the saving rates have been cut in half, and this also produces financial strain on marriages and families and quality of life. Uh, Healthy food is more expensive, and this is the obesity rates since 1971. Uh, the trending less cooperative society. These are the incarceration rates since 1971. And what all of these charts here have in common, saving rates, obesity, incarceration, is they all trace very strongly to the rise of inflation. And what these statistics here, these are from the United States, which generally has one of the least problems of inflation in the world. But if you look around the world, there are just some mind-boggling inflation rates that are out there. So these numbers are off the charts. And to that point, we are going to look at an extreme example, and it's no surprise that we do have some big problems in our world today. And we're gonna get into one of these. It's actually very sad. We're going to look at West Africa, Senegal. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that correctly, but here it is on a map, Senegal. And it's one of 15 countries, 13 to 15 countries in Africa. I couldn't find an accurate number, but they're all former French colonies, and they're all still under the control of a French currency called the CFA franc. And it's not a very good deal for these African nations. So here, the relationship is this. So here's the government of France and the central bank. They have a relationship with a dictator of this African nation, and these are the individuals in that nation. And the currency that has to be used is all under the control of the Bank of France. And you look at the impacts of what this caused. So if I have a business in this country and I want to get a business loan, I have to go through the Bank of France. If I want to buy or do business outside of my country, say hire a company to do some work, I have to offer that contract first to companies in France. So I have to get the loan from France and then offer the business also to French companies. So it's a way, it's a way for France to double dip. And then the assets that support this whole currency also don't stay in the nation; they stay in France. And from an inflation point of view, this is actually kind of comparable to the U.S. I was surprised. This is about 7.5% inflation since 1948, which is it's worse than the U.S. But I was expecting to see a much higher number. And if you look at the cause of this, this is the real source of the problem. So what happens is France will print money out of thin air. Issue debt. That debt is now an asset. They create liabilities off it. They send it to this nation in Africa, and in exchange, they get raw, valuable materials out of the ground. In this case, it's uranium for France's nuclear reactors. So France is essentially creating money out of thin air and stealing, there's no better word, stealing the raw resources of this country in Africa. And this is no different from the phenomenon that we covered that happened in the 1600s, so about 600 years ago, when glass agri beads were used as currency in Africa, and Europeans had glass technology, so they made a bunch of their own agri beads, and then go to the next step. They then flooded the African market with agri beads and completely eradicated the wealth of Africa. It's the same thing that's happening now, just 600 years later. And there's the raw numbers behind it. The negative impacts. This is the GDP is the production rate of production, so it's actually going down 35%, even though the inflation rate's going up. The average income's going down, and it's considered these are not good things to be known for. And then if you look at everywhere where the CFA franc is used, about 180 million people, all the individuals in this country have really no choice but to accept this deal. And most of these countries are considered the least developed or the absolute poorest in the world. So in conclusion, the world has a massive number of people who are unbanked. They have no foundation for a monetary system, no foundation to advance their individual society and also help us advance humans as a whole. Another 2 billion people across the planet unknowingly, largely unknowingly, had their wealth siphoned by government-driven inflation, which not only harms their financial situation, it has all types of second, third order impacts on their health, their family, obesity, and incarceration rates, and so on and so on. And then lastly, we have nothing short of modern day slavery still in existence. Tens of millions of individuals with no rights to their own natural resources, no right to develop their own society, having their country's wealth essentially stolen from them.